3 months had passed since the New Horizon returned to Earth. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the emergency meeting room in Washington, watching world leaders argue about what to do. The room was full of presidents, prime ministers, and generals from every major country on Earth. "We should accept their offer," said President Chun of the Asian Federation. "If our sun really is becoming dangerous, we need to save our people." "It's a trap," Jake said for the 10th time that day. Dr. Campbell's analysis is clear. The species that join the Dominion don't survive. They disappear. Dr. Lisa Campbell stood up and activated the large screen on the wall. "Look at these images again. The Dominion showed us 47 species that they helped. But when I ran genetic analysis on the populations, I found something terrible. The screen showed faces from different worlds. At first glance, they looked like different alien species living together. But when Lisa highlighted certain features, a pattern became clear. These aren't different species anymore," she explained. "They all have the same basic genetic structure now. The Dominion isn't moving species to new worlds. They're breeding them out of existence. In 3 or 4 generations, there are no more original species left. Just Dominion citizens who all look and think the same way." General Rodriguez from South America slammed his hand on the table. "So what do we do? Fight them? Their ships are bigger than anything we have." "Maybe we don't have to fight," suggested Prime Minister Johnson from Europe. "Maybe we can negotiate with them." Jake shook his head. "I don't think they understand negotiation the way we do. Every species they've dealt with has either said yes immediately or been destroyed. They don't seem to have experience with anyone who says no and means it." The argument continued for hours. Finally, President Helen Brooks of North America called for quiet. She was an older woman who had been a soldier before becoming a politician. Her voice was calm but firm. "The decision is made," she said. "We tell them no. We stay on Earth, and we prepare for whatever comes next." "What if they attack us?" asked President Chun. "Then we defend ourselves," Brooks replied. "Humans have been fighting for survival since we lived in caves. We're not going to stop now." 2 weeks later, the Dominion ships appeared. 12 massive vessels came out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. They were even bigger than the ship Jake had first met. Each one was the size of a small city. Admiral Kevin Stone stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Station, watching the alien fleet approach. He was a career military man who had fought in 3 different wars on Earth. Now he was facing the biggest war in human history. "They're sending a message," reported Lieutenant Sarah Martinez. "Put it on screen," Stone ordered. Commander Ziegther appeared on the screen, but he looked different now. His friendly smile was gone. His large black eyes were cold and angry. "Humans of Earth," he said, "you have had time to consider our generous offer. Our ships are here to begin the evacuation of your people. Prepare your population centers for transport." Admiral Stone stepped forward. "This is Admiral Kevin Stone of Earth Defense Command. We reject your offer. We're staying on our homeworld." Ziegther looked confused. "You reject our help? But your world is dying. Your sun will destroy you." "We'll take our chances," Stone said simply. "You don't understand," Ziegther said, and now his voice sounded frustrated. "We are trying to save you. Every species chooses to come with us once they understand the benefits." "Maybe we're not like every other species," Stone replied. Ziegther was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, harder, more threatening. "Very well. If you will not come willingly, we will demonstrate why cooperation is necessary. We will destroy one of your space stations as a warning. Then you will reconsider." The screen went black. Stone turned to his communications officer. "Get me Captain Morrison, and evacuate the International Space Station immediately." "On." The New Horizon. Jake was coordinating the emergency evacuation when the attack came. A beam of pure energy shot out from the lead Dominion ship and hit the space station. The entire structure disappeared in a flash of light, but the station was empty. Every person had been evacuated 3 hours earlier. Jake opened a communication. Channel to the Dominion fleet. Commander Zeekther, this is Captain Morrison. Thank you for the demonstration. Now we know exactly what your weapons can do. Zeekther appeared on screen again. This time he looked truly confused. You evacuated the station, he said. It wasn't a question. Of course we did. You told us you were going to destroy it. Did you think we would just leave people there to die? But but you should be terrified now. You should be begging for mercy. Jake smiled. Commander, let me explain something about humans. When someone threatens us, we don't get scared. We get ready. Dr. Campbell was standing next to Jake. She leaned forward to speak. Commander, in all your experience with other species, have any of them ever prepared for your attacks? Zeekther hesitated. They usually surrender after we demonstrate our power. What about the species that didn't surrender immediately? Campbell asked. They fought conventional space battles. They lost quickly. Did any of them change their tactics during the fighting? Zeekther looked even more confused. Change their tactics? Why would they do that? Jake and Campbell exchanged glances. They were beginning to understand something important about their enemy. Commander, Jake said, I think you're about to learn something new. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Stone was meeting with the planet's best military minds. The room was full of generals, admirals, and strategists from every nation. They're used to fighting enemies who use the same tactics from beginning to end, Stone explained. Every species they've conquered has fought them the same way, but humans are different. How are we different? Asked General Kim from the Pacific Defense Force. We adapt, Stone said simply. We learn from our mistakes. We change our approach when something isn't working. I don't think the Dominion has ever faced an enemy that does that. Colonel Maria Santos raised her hand. What about their superior? Technology? Technology is just tools, Stone replied. The best tools in the galaxy don't help. If you don't know how to use them against an enemy that won't fight the way you expect. Engineer Carlos Mendez spoke up from the back of the room. Admiral, I've been analyzing their energy beam. It's powerful, but it's designed for specific targets. I think we can modify our mining equipment to create weapons they won't expect. What kind of weapons? Railguns, sir, mass drivers. We take the equipment we use to move asteroids and turn it into weapons. Their shields are designed to stop energy beams and traditional projectiles. But a chunk of metal moving at near light speed? That might be different. Stone nodded. Do it. And start thinking about what other equipment we can adapt. Remember, they're expecting us to fight like every other species they've conquered. Let's disappoint them. Back in space, Zeekther was talking to his own officers. He was starting to realize that this war might not go as easily as he had expected. Sir, said his tactical officer, the humans are moving their ships into unusual positions. They're not forming traditional battle lines. What are they doing? We're not sure. Sir, it doesn't match any known military formation. Zeekther stared at the tactical display. The human ships were scattered throughout the solar system in what looked like random positions. Some were hiding behind moons. Others were near the asteroid belt. A few were actually diving toward the sun. It makes no sense, he said. How can they fight effectively when their ships are so spread out? His tactical officer shrugged. Perhaps they don't know how to fight properly, sir. But Zeekther was beginning to suspect that the humans knew exactly what they were doing, and that worried him more than he wanted to admit. The real war began when Commander Ziegler ordered his fleet to move toward Earth. He expected the humans to meet him in open space for a traditional battle. Instead, something happened that had never occurred in all his years of conquest. Human ships disappeared. Where did they go? Ziegler demanded from his command chair. His tactical officer, Sub-Commander Veltar, studied the scanning displays with confusion. Sir, they were here a moment ago. 12 ships in formation. Now our sensors show nothing. They must be hiding, Ziegler said. Scan behind the planets. We are scanning, sir. We detect no ships anywhere in the system. Ziegler was starting to feel frustrated. Every other species had met his fleet with their own ships arranged in neat battle lines. The fighting had always been direct and predictable. Energy weapons against energy weapons. Shields against shields. The side with better technology won quickly. But humans seemed to fight differently, Captain. Amy Rodriguez was commanding the human defense fleet from her ship, the Earth's Pride, but she wasn't where Ziegler expected her to be. Her ship was hidden behind Earth's moon, along with 3 other vessels. How long until we reach the launch point? She asked her navigator. 30 seconds, Captain, replied Lieutenant Tom Wilson. Amy smiled. The Dominion ships had powerful sensors, but they were designed to detect ships in open space. They weren't designed to track vessels using gravity fields as cover. All ships, prepare for slingshot maneuver, she ordered. The 4 human ships fired their engines and swung around the moon, using its gravity to increase their speed. They came out on the other side, moving much faster than normal, approaching the Dominion fleet from an angle that the aliens hadn't expected. Contact, shouted Sub-Commander Veltar. 4 human ships approaching from Sector 7. Impossible, Ziegler said. Our sensors showed that sector was empty. They're moving very fast, sir. Faster than their normal engine capacity should allow. Ziegler didn't understand how the humans had achieved such speed, but it didn't matter. 4 ships against 12 was still hopeless for the humans. Target the lead ship and fire, he ordered. The Dominion's energy beams lanced out toward the Earth's Pride, but Amy had expected this. Her ship suddenly changed direction, diving toward the asteroid belt. Follow them, Ziegler commanded as the Dominion ships pursued the human vessels into the asteroid field. They discovered another unpleasant surprise. The humans had been busy during the past 3 months. Engineer Carlos Mendez had worked day and night to modify the asteroid mining equipment. Large chunks of metal had been fitted with small engines and guidance systems. When the Dominion ships entered the asteroid belt, hundreds of these improvised missiles launched at them from all directions. Sir, we're under attack, Veltar reported. But these aren't normal weapons. They appear to be modified mining equipment. The Dominion shields were designed to stop energy beams and military projectiles. They were not designed to stop chunks of iron and nickel moving at incredible speeds. The first impacts sent shockwaves through the alien ships. How are they doing this? Ziegler demanded. Captain Rodriguez opened a communication channel to the Dominion fleet. Commander Ziegler, this is Captain Rodriguez. You're fighting humans now. We don't play by anyone else's rules. 3 more Dominion ships took damage from the improvised weapons. Ziegler realized he needed to get his fleet out of the asteroid belt, but the humans weren't finished. From the other side of the solar system, Captain Jake Morrison led another group of human ships in a completely different type of attack. His ships had been hiding near the sun, using the star's radiation to mask their heat signatures. All ships, begin mirror maneuver, Jake ordered. The human ships had been fitted with highly reflective panels taken from solar power stations. As the Dominion ships fired their energy weapons at the asteroids, Jake's ships positioned themselves to catch those beams and redirect them. The aliens found themselves being hit by their own weapons, reflected back at them from angles they couldn't predict. "This is impossible," Ziegler said. "No species fights like this." "Sir," Veltar said, "perhaps we should withdraw and request reinforcements." "No," Ziegler snapped. "We are the Dominion. We do not retreat from primitive species." But the humans had more surprises waiting. On Earth, Admiral Stone was coordinating ground defenses with Colonel Maria Santos. The Dominion had tried to land troops on several continents, expecting to face conventional military forces. Instead, they found an enemy that used the planet itself as a weapon. "The aliens have landed in the Amazon basin," reported Major David. "Kim, good," Colonel Santos replied. "Lieutenant Jones, activate the river traps." The humans had spent months preparing the jungle for invasion. When the Dominion forces tried to advance through the forest, they discovered that the humans had redirected entire rivers. What looked like solid ground was actually floating platforms that collapsed when heavy alien vehicles crossed them. Dominion soldiers found themselves trapped in swamps that hadn't existed the day before dot in the mountains of North America. The aliens faced a different problem. Captain Lisa Brown led a team of engineers who had spent weeks preparing avalanche zones. When Dominion ships flew through the mountain passes, carefully placed explosives brought down entire mountainsides. Aliens had energy shields that could stop weapons, but they couldn't stop millions of tons of rock and snow. "Sir," one of Ziegler's ground commanders reported, "the humans are not fighting like soldiers. They fight like wild animals." This was closer to the truth than the alien realized. Humans had evolved as hunters on a world that tried to kill them every day. They had learned to use every advantage their dangerous planet could provide dot in the Pacific Ocean. Dominion submarines found themselves caught in artificial whirlpools created by underwater mining equipment. In the Arctic, alien vehicles were trapped by ice that the humans had deliberately weakened with thermal charges. But the strangest thing of all was how the humans seemed to enjoy the challenge. Intercepted communications from human forces revealed soldiers laughing during combat and treating the invasion like a complex puzzle to solve. "Did you see that shot, Rodriguez?" came one transmission. "Beautiful work, Kim. Think we can do it again with the next group." Ziegler listened to these communications with growing confusion. Every other species he had conquered had treated war as a terrible necessity. They fought with fear and desperation. Humans fought with curiosity and excitement. "Sub-Commander Veltar," he said, "in your military studies, have you ever encountered a species that seemed to enjoy warfare?" "No, sir. War is always seen as a failure of diplomacy, something to be ended as quickly as possible." "Then why do the humans sound like they're having fun?" Veltar had no answer. As the battle continued, the Dominion forces found themselves losing ships and soldiers to tactics that weren't in any military database. The humans didn't fight like other species. They fought like the apex predators of a death world, using every advantage their dangerous planet had taught them. Worse, they kept changing their methods. Every time the Dominion adapted to one human tactic, the humans would try something completely different. "Sir," Veltar reported, "we've lost 5 ships and most of our ground forces. The humans are not behaving according to any known military doctrine." Ziegler stared at the tactical display. The human ships were now approaching his fleet in a formation that looked like no military pattern he had ever seen. It almost looked like they were trying to surround his much larger force. "That's suicide," he said. "They can't possibly think they can defeat us with so few ships." But as he watched, the human ships began working together in ways that defied logic. They shared power between vessels, used each other as shields, and somehow managed to coordinate attacks that came from multiple directions at once. For the first time in his military career, Commander Ziegler began to wonder if he had made a terrible mistake. While the battle raged around Earth, something unexpected was happening across the galaxy. The Dominion had always controlled information carefully, making sure their subjects only heard about their victories. But humans had been broadcasting everything. On the mining colony of Kepler 442b, Elder Nix was listening to transmissions from the human war. He was one of the few Cetians who still remembered his homeworld before the Dominion arrived 50 years ago. Most of his people had forgotten the old stories, the old ways, even their original names. "Listen," Nix whispered to his grandson Jack. "Listen to how these humans fight." The communication from Earth was scratchy but clear. Captain Rodriguez was coordinating an attack on a Dominion cruiser. "All units, remember what we practiced. Use the moon's gravity to swing around and hit them from behind. If that doesn't work, we try the mirror trick again." Jack looked confused. "Elder, what does she mean? Why don't they just attack directly?" "Because they're thinking," Nix said, his old eyes bright with excitement. "They're not following a plan made by someone else. They're making new plans as they fight." On another world, former citizens of the Rigelian system were gathering in secret to listen to human broadcasts. Dr. Campbell's voice came through their hidden receivers. "The key to understanding the Dominion is recognizing that they don't expect resistance," she was saying. "They've conquered 47 species using the same method every time. Psychological pressure followed by overwhelming force. But they've never faced a species that refused to be psychologically broken." An old Rigelian named Tess translated the words for the younger members of her family. Many of them had never heard the concept of refusing orders from the Dominion. "Is that possible?" asked her daughter Mira. "Can people really just say no to the Dominion?" "Apparently, yes," Tess said quietly. "These humans are proving it." The news was spreading faster than the Dominion could stop it. On world after world, people who had forgotten they were once free began to remember. On Earth, Dr. Lisa Campbell was working in the communications center, coordinating the broadcast of human tactical information to anyone who could receive it. She had made a crucial discovery about their enemy. "Admiral Stone," she called out, "I've finished analyzing the Dominion's psychological profiles of conquered species." Admiral Stone walked over to her workstation. "What did you find?" "Every species they've conquered shared the same basic traits," Campbell explained. "They all had hierarchical societies where orders came from the top down. They all valued survival over freedom. And most importantly, they all believed that warfare was a failure of civilization." "And humans? We're the exact opposite of everything they understand. We evolved from hunters who had to think for themselves. We have societies that resist top-down control. We've overthrown our own governments when they became too oppressive, and we don't see war as a failure of diplomacy." Stone nodded. "We see it as diplomacy by other means." "Exactly. But there's something else, Admiral. The Dominion's records show that every species they conquered had a mathematical breaking point, a point where continued resistance seemed pointless." "Do we have a breaking point?" Campbell smiled grimly. "I don't think so. We're a species that kept trying to fly even after thousands of failed attempts. We kept exploring even when it killed most of our explorers. We rebuilt entire cities after they were destroyed by earthquakes, floods, and wars. I think we're the first species the Dominion has met that doesn't understand the concept of giving up." Meanwhile, Captain Jake Morrison was leading a diplomatic mission that would change galactic history. His ship, the New Horizon, was broadcasting on all frequencies as it traveled toward Dominion space. "This is Captain Morrison of Earth," his message said. "To any species listening to this transmission, you need to know something important. The Dominion can be defeated. They're not invincible. They're not even particularly smart. They're just bullies who have never been punched back." His message included detailed information about Dominion weaknesses, human fighting tactics, and most importantly, proof that resistance was possible. On Proxima Station, a trading hub controlled by the Dominion. The message was received by a group of former Eltarians. Their leader, Captain Ross, had been a military officer before his world was relocated. "Can this be true?" asked his second-in-command, Lieutenant Vale. "Can the Dominion really be defeated by one primitive species?" Ross studied the tactical data the humans had included with their message. "Look at these battle reports, Vale. The humans aren't winning because they're stronger. They're winning because they fight differently." "How differently?" "Every other species fights the same way. Form lines, exchange fire. Hope your technology is better than theirs. But humans ... double quotes. Ross paused, studying the data. "Humans fight like they're personally angry at every enemy ship." Vale looked at the reports. The human tactics were unlike anything in standard military training. They used gravity wells as weapons, turned mining equipment into artillery, and seemed to treat every battle like a chance to try something new. "Sir," Vale said quietly, "what if we tried fighting like that?" Ross looked around the station. There were 200 former military personnel from 6 different conquered species working here. All of them had given up hope long ago. "Get me the station, Commander," Ross said. "It's time to send a message to the Dominion." The first rebellion began 3 days later. Proxima Station had been a quiet trading post for 15 years. The Dominion garrison was small and used to dealing with passive, obedient workers. They were not prepared for 200 former soldiers who had been studying human tactical manuals. Captain Ross led the attack personally. Instead of a direct assault on the Dominion Command Center, his people used human-inspired guerrilla tactics. They disabled the station's artificial gravity in sections, forcing the Dominion forces to fight in zero gravity while the rebels used magnetic boots. They redirected the station's power grid to create electrical barriers. They even used the water recycling system to flood certain corridors. The Dominion commander, Sub-Leader Kexner, sent a desperate message to his superiors. "The workers are in rebellion," he reported, "but they're not fighting like workers. They're fighting like ... like the humans." "That's impossible," came the reply. "These species don't know how to fight effectively." Then explain how they've captured half my station using nothing but maintenance equipment and ventilation shafts. The rebellion succeeded in 18 hours. For the first time in galactic history, a Dominion-controlled facility had been captured by its own workers. Ross immediately began broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is Captain Ross of the Free Proxima Station. To all oppressed peoples of the galaxy, we have a message. The humans were right. The Dominion can be defeated. We just proved it." The news spread like wildfire. On world after world, people who had forgotten they were capable of resistance began to remember. Back on Earth, Admiral Stone received reports of the uprising with satisfaction. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Martinez, "we're receiving confirmation of rebel activity on 12 different worlds. They're all using variations of our tactical manuals." "Good," Stone said. "The Dominion built their empire on the belief that resistance was futile. Once that belief is broken, the whole system starts to collapse." Commander Ziegther, still fighting the losing battle around Earth, received the news with growing horror. His empire wasn't just losing a war. It was facing a revolution. "Sir," Sub-Commander Veltar reported, "High Command is requesting immediate reinforcements for 17 different systems." 17? Ziegther couldn't believe it. How is that possible? "The humans have been broadcasting their tactics to the entire galaxy, sir. Every species we've conquered is learning how to fight like humans." Ziegther stared at the tactical display, showing the ongoing battle around Earth. The humans had taught the galaxy something that the Dominion had spent centuries trying to hide. Resistance was not only possible, it could be fun. The war lasted 2 years, but everyone knew the real outcome much earlier. Commander Zeekther stood in chains before the Dominion High Council, trying to explain how everything had gone so wrong. The council chamber was filled with the most powerful beings in the galaxy, all of them staring at him with anger and confusion. "Explain to us how a single primitive species destroyed our empire," demanded High Counselor Mextar, his voice echoing through the vast room. Zeekther looked up at the 12 council members sitting on their floating platforms high above him. Each one represented thousands of years of galactic dominance. Now their empire was crumbling, and they needed someone to blame. The humans were different, Zeekther said simply. They didn't fight like other species. Different how? Asked Counselor Rexvol. They had inferior technology, smaller ships, fewer soldiers. They had something else, Zeekther replied. Something we've never encountered before. Before he could explain further, the council chamber doors opened. Guards brought in a human prisoner, a woman with short gray hair and calm eyes, Dr. Patricia. Kim had been captured during the siege of Mars 6 months earlier. "This is the human scientist we captured," announced the guard captain. "She has agreed to speak." High Counselor Mextar looked down at the small human woman. "You will explain your species' behavior. Why do you refuse to surrender when defeat is obvious?" Dr. Kim looked around the chamber calmly. She had spent months preparing for this moment, knowing that her words might be the most important ever spoken by a human. "You want to know why you can't defeat us?" she asked. "It's not because we're stronger, or smarter, or more advanced. It's because we're the first species you've encountered that understands a simple truth." "What truth?" demanded Mextar. "The only way to lose is to stop fighting." The council members looked at each other with confusion. Counselor Dexiner leaned forward. "That makes no sense. Every species understands when continued resistance becomes futile." Dr. Kim smiled. "No, they don't. They understand when resistance becomes difficult. There's a difference." She walked slowly around the chamber as she spoke, her voice carrying clearly to every corner. "Every species you've conquered had the same fatal weakness. They could imagine acceptable losses. They had mathematical formulas for when resistance became pointless, cultural concepts of honorable surrender, psychological breaking points where continued struggle seemed hopeless." "Of course," said Counselor Yexler, "this is rational behavior. But humans don't have a surrender reflex," Dr. Kim continued. "We're a species that evolved on a world where giving up meant death. Our entire civilization is built on the concept of trying again after failure." She stopped walking and faced the council directly. "You can't break something that's already broken and rebuilt itself stronger." High Counselor Mextar stood up on his platform. "Impossible. Every species has limits." "Do we?" Dr. Kim asked. "Let me tell you about human history. We kept trying to fly for thousands of years, even though it killed most people who attempted it. We explored dangerous oceans, even when 90% of our explorers died. We rebuilt entire cities after earthquakes destroyed them, sometimes multiple times in the same location." The council was listening now, their anger replaced by growing unease. When one approach failed, we tried another. When that failed, we tried a third. We've never met a problem we couldn't solve, given enough time and enough failures to learn from. Counselor Rexvol interrupted. "But surely your people understand the concept of overwhelming odds." Dr. Kim laughed. "Overwhelming odds are our specialty. We spent most of our history as small groups of hunters facing creatures much larger and stronger than us. We learned that size and strength don't matter if you're smarter and more persistent." She pointed toward the viewing screen that showed the galaxy beyond. "Your empire was built on a foundation of fear and learned helplessness. You conquered species by making resistance seem hopeless, but humans introduced a new concept to the galaxy." "What concept?" asked Mextar. Hope itself can be a weapon. The council chamber fell silent. Outside, reports were coming in of rebellions on dozens of worlds. Species that had been quiet for centuries were rising up, using tactics they had learned from human broadcasts. Doctor. Kim continued speaking. You made one critical error in judgment. You assumed that all intelligent species think the same way. But humans evolved differently. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. She walked to the center of the chamber. Most species develop intelligence to avoid conflict. Humans developed intelligence to win conflicts we couldn't avoid. Most species see warfare as a failure of diplomacy. Humans see warfare as diplomacy. By other means. Counselor Dexner stood up angrily. You're saying your species enjoys violence. No, Dr. Kim replied calmly. We enjoy problems. Warfare is just a very complex problem that requires creative solutions. The truth of her words was becoming clear even as she spoke. The human example had broken the psychological chains that held the Dominion Empire together. Across the galaxy, oppressed populations were remembering that resistance was possible. Commander Zeke Thur, still standing in chains, finally understood what had happened. The humans didn't just defeat us militarily, he said quietly. They defeated. The idea that we couldn't be defeated. Dr. Kim nodded. Exactly. Your power was never really about technology or numbers. It was about convincing people that fighting back was hopeless. And now? Asked High Counselor Maxtar. Now every species in the galaxy knows that's a lie. The reports kept coming in. World after world was declaring independence. The Dominion military was overwhelmed, trying to fight dozens of rebellions at once. Worse, every rebel group was using human tactics, adapting and changing their strategies. Faster than the Dominion could respond. Within 5 years, the Dominion had completely collapsed. Not through military defeat, but through the simple realization by their subjects that resistance was possible. The human example had broken the most powerful empire in galactic history. Years later, when historians asked why the Dominion fell. So quickly after millennia of dominance, former Admiral Stone would give the same answer that became legendary across the galaxy. They made the mistake of picking on someone who punches back. The real reason nobody dares to fight humans isn't their technology, their numbers, or their military skill. It's because they're the only species in the galaxy. That treats impossible as a suggestion rather than a fact. They don't fight to win. They fight because not fighting isn't an option they recognize. Dr. Kim, now free and serving as Earth's first galactic ambassador, would often end her speeches the same way. The universe isn't built for the meek to inherit. It's built for those who refuse to kneel. On the memorial wall of the Galactic Liberation Museum, built on the ruins of the old Dominion capital, a simple inscription reads, "To those who remembered that freedom is not given, but taken." And in the deepest archives of what was once the Dominion High Council, a single document remains from Commander Zeke Thur's final report. When asked why the Dominion never attempted to return and reconquer their lost territories, he wrote only one sentence: "Because we learned that humans don't just defeat you. They teach everyone else that you can be defeated." And once that lesson spreads, empires built on fear cannot survive. The galaxy learned that day that there are some species. You simply don't fight. Not because they're too strong, but because they're too stubborn to lose.